So we're going to be talking about the human brain, and we're going to be talking about a little bit of what goes on inside the brain and how you can attune it to the highest function that it can possibly be, intensing your or amplifying, enhancing your cognitive development, your cognitive space, your neurons, your frequencies, your brain frequencies, your waves, and everything like that. And this is by Dr. K, by the way. So we're gonna get started. So first off, we're just gonna dive straight into it. You have a brain. Your brain is comprised of millions and millions of neurons that are connected to the nervous systems, the nervous system in your body, which helps you walk, talk, breathe, eat, function in everyday life, and so on and so forth. So we're going to be talking about a certain part of the brain, which is called the diencephalon, and so we're going to be talking about it's a part of the brain that's like sort of central near the cerebral cortex. And it's located in the thalamus is located within the diencephalon. So the thalamus is a sensory informer that informs the nervous system to relate information to say if you wanted to grab something. The thalamus would instruct the nervous system to tell you to go grab that drink or to grab that pencil. The next part of this part of the brain is the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus maintains homeostasis by regularly linking the endocrine system with the nervous system, and so it maintains homeostasis. So your homeostasis is the thing that regulates your temperature. It regulates certain behaviors in the body that helps you feel, that helps you to say, well, this is too hot or too cold, and it also regulates your heart rate, body temperature, electrolyte balance, hunger, body weight, digestion, and circadian rhythms. I learned recently something about circadian rhythms. Circadian rhythms are something that can be adjusted through your environment. It's something that can be adjusted through your interactions with people, even your health, like the way that you eat, and so on and so forth. So the hypothalamus also stimulates the anterior, the front, and the posterior, the back pituitary gland to secrete hormones. Your hormones are the things that keep you, I guess, in check. Sort of similar to the hypothalamus and the endocrine system, but different because hormones can become imbalanced by a multitude of different things. But it's never a good thing to have your hormones imbalanced. It's always important to keep your hormones in check, because it can ultimately lead to a wide array of things that I don't really necessarily want to go into right now, but we're going to keep moving. The next thing is the pineal gland. The pineal gland, if you've been on Instagram and you've listened to any spiritual guru or any neo-spiritualist, they will tell you that the eye of Horus, or the third eye, is linked to the pineal gland. But this isn't always necessarily the case. The pineal gland's main job is to control the circadian rhythms of sleep and wakefulness by secreting melatonin. Circadian rhythms, if you wanted me to go into it a little bit more, it's the cycle of time that helps regulate your body. So from the time that you wake up and get your morning routine done, eat breakfast, go to work, work out, these are all attuned to your circadian rhythms. It's basically your daily routine. So what the pineal gland does, in a scientific and purely biological sense, is it controls your sleep cycles. It controls your awakeness. It's attuned to your REM sleep, how much sleep you get, how long can you stay awake during the day, do you take naps during the day, so on and so forth. And it helps regulate the time between your your sleep, your subconscious, your conscious mind, and your REM sleep cycle. Spiritually, if you want to get into a little bit of divinity, as that's also attuned to my degree, the pineal gland was often referred to as the eye of Horus in ancient Egypt, and it's also related to cognizance, consciousness, becoming aware. Like I said, so when you have wakefulness, you are conscious. You are consciously engaged in whatever you're doing at that point in time. When you're asleep, you're still conscious. That's why we have dreams. Dreams can be attuned to a multitude of different things, but mainly the pineal gland is attuned to wakefulness, sleep, and becoming aware of your surroundings and certain things like that. Next up is your, we're going to be getting a little bit more into the hypothalamus. We touched on it a little bit in the first slide, but the hypothalamus is the small area in the brain that it's a very small, fleshy sort of balled up piece of gum thing or object that's in the center of the brain that coordinates the endocrine system. The endocrine system is basically your nervous system, sort of the circulatory system in a sense, and it maintains homeostasis because blood has a lot to do with your nervous system and how whatever you put into your bloodstream, that's what you're basically going to emit into the world. And what's in your blood ultimately affects what's going on in your brain, and so on and so forth, and vice versa if you really want to go there. It's located above the pituitary gland and below the third ventricle. It receives signals in various brain regions. If you have, let's just say a cocaine user. A cocaine user has cocaine in his bloodstream or her bloodstream. That will ultimately affect the mind, of course, because you've seen someone on cocaine before. If you watched any movie, it has a relatively positive impact on the mind, but it's not always seen as a good thing as it relates to long-term health. It has definite long-term negative health issues. It creates negative long-term health issues. And it receives signals from various brain regions. The hypothalamus then releases hormones that affect the pituitary gland, which affects the functions of the following organs: the thyroid gland, which is in your throat area, the adrenal glands, the reproductive organs, the kidneys, and even the musculoskeletal system. The hypothalamus can be tuned up, if you want to speak in a musician's place. It can be tuned up to ultimately impact your fertility, your vitality, and even your skeletal system if you are an athlete and you work out and you stretch and so on and so forth. The next step is the medulla oblongata. Erykah Badu has a specific stage name. I think it's Eric Badu oblongata, something like that. She uses oblongata quite frequently, as well as Andre 3000. It was Outkast. They always usually talk about the oblongata. The medulla oblongata is the connection between the brainstem and the spinal cord, carrying multiple important functional centers. It is comprised of the cardiovascular-respiratory regulation system, descending motor tracts, ascending sensory tracts, and the origin of cranial nerves 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the medulla oblongata is not normally talked about part of the brain, mainly because it's not a lot of people can really tap into their medulla oblongata. It's sort of packed into the back of your neck, and it takes years and years of studying, meditation, and research, and just trying to find out what it is that ultimately is makes it stimulate. It's hard to stimulate your medulla oblongata. It's a part of the brain that most people don't use, like that whole you only use 5% of your brain type situation, but it's completely untrue. But it is true that most people do not tap into their medulla oblongata. It's hard to stimulate, and we're going to be sort of linking that back into we're going to be sort of tying that back into what I'm basically trying to say is that we're going to link that back into how we can stimulate our medulla oblongata later in the lecture. So see, I'm still trying to do research and figure it all out myself. But it is the ascending sensory tracts that are, you see these sort of, you see where there's like stems growing out of the bottom of the shaft, I guess, if you want to call it. There's stems growing out of that, and those stems ultimately pick up negative or positive vibrations or frequencies within the mind. And if you keep feeding your medulla oblongata negativity, propaganda, and, media that's not attuned to your highest vibration, your highest vibrational frequency, if you sleep too much, if you eat unhealthy foods, if you don't feed your mind blueberries and antioxidants to clean out and flesh out the mind, the medulla oblongata will be extremely hard to tap into. So it picks up different frequencies like different languages, frequencies like different cultures, colors, art. It's attuned to music, geniuses, Albert Einstein. These are the type of people, rest in peace Albert Einstein, genius, who have tapped into the medulla oblongata, and they've ascended, and they've connected their motor tracks so that their motor skills can be attuned and in tune with your highest vibration and highest frequency. So that's the medulla oblongata. Like I said, the ego is so important in terms of psychology and psychological, your psychological composition, because it's attuned to a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. The ego is one of the main causes of a lot of people's psychological deficiencies and even mental illness. If you blow up your ego, it's hard for you to stay balanced. It's hard for you to look at everyone as human beings as opposed to figures, facts, titles, and basically labeling people to a caste system, or seeing people as what they can do for you or value. Seeing people in terms of value is not necessarily the most productive thing that we can be doing with our minds. So it's our self-esteem or our self-importance. Is how we look at ourselves. The ego is the thing that you see in the mirror when you first wake up in the morning, that someone told me once, a professor probably, and it's like I said, it's how you view yourself. If you wake up in the mirror, and regardless of how the mirror looks, if it's dirty, clean, or whatever, the first thing that you do when you look into the mirror in the morning, that's your ego. That's not you. And then you start washing off your face, and you start combing your hair out, and you start to gain a sense of who is within, who's what the person who is really within you. You know, that person starts to speak, and you start to gain a little self-confidence, not self-esteem, but confidence. The more you brush your teeth and break down the layers, you're breaking down your ego. So this is I was reading a book the other day by Deepak Chopra. He's one of the leading missionaries and leading researchers and scientists of the mind. And he said this quote, he stated this quote, it says, "If intentions are left to the ego, great things can be accomplished. But the things are minuscule compared to what can be achieved with infinite intelligence and organizing power at your disposal." And what he's basically saying is, if left unchecked, your ego can be your ultimate demise or your ultimate downfall. But only when you dispose of your ego or this false, fictitious claim about yourself or claims about yourself, then and only then can intelligence arise. But not only intelligence, infinite intelligence, which is literally found in your mind. The entire world, the entire existence, the universe itself is within your mind, and it's so much to go into, but the lens that we look out of is not necessarily what is. All this is a reflection of light, and we can feel and touch matter, and we can engage with what we see and what we touch and what we feel, what we smell. We have senses, which is defined acutely and scientifically by the medulla oblongata. But if we look at a bigger scope, we will never truly be able to understand what's going on within our mind, around our mind, or even within ourselves. and that we are these infinite beings as our minds construct. But the only way that we can break apart this shell that we've created for ourselves, that society has given us, that society has labeled for us. I'm a teacher, I'm a doctor, I'm a physician, I'm a bum, I'm a murderer, I'm a prostitute, I'm a whore, or whatever. Society has thrown in your face. These things aren't you. And we need to dispose of these things so that we can get to a point where we can see ourselves and not the mirror. And the ego can also be seen as the false self, a self-derived personality trait that renders you incapable of seeing yourself in completeness or wholeness. The false self is always wanting and striving for more. The best way that I can describe this is, so I'm gonna bring it back to the mirror conversation. So when you look into the mirror in the morning, there's always some dark figure. It's a tiny little figure that speaks to your mind and says, "You're ugly. You're incapable of doing this. You're false. You're a liar. You're never gonna succeed. You're never gonna find love. You're never gonna do this. You're ugly. Your hairline's receding. You're too this. You're too fat. You're too skinny. These are all things that are attuned to the false self. And it's this little gremlin dude that's running around in your head. That's basically what your ego is. it's a little gremlin that runs through your head. No scientist, no neurologist, no psychologist, there's no psychiatric term to describe what it is, but we know what exactly it is. We've done research, we've done statistics, we've ran polls. No one can quite grasp what it is or what, how we can cure or treat it. Other than going to therapy, I don't know what else you would about talking to a psychologist or a shrink, but there's a little dark gremlin that runs through your head and tells you all of these things. He whispers in your ear, "You're not," and it's a self-derived personality trait. Is the best way that I could put it, and it renders you incapable of seeing yourself in completeness or wholeness. It always tells you, you need to do this, you need this, or you want this. If you get this, you'll be able to get this. Or if you do your hair, if you get a new bundle, people are gonna like your hair. Or if you get a new, it holds our mouths closed to what we want to say. What we want to say is, I don't care how I look, I feel beautiful. I don't care who tells me that I'm ugly, I know I'm handsome. Or I have the confidence no matter how many times people telling me that you don't have you shouldn't do this. It's a limiter, and it's important that we dispose of it. Once we expose the false self and the ego, we can start breaking down our entire cognitive makeup, our entire cognitive composition. And the more we stretch it and make it malleable by reading, research, therapy, talks with highly trained professionals, doctors, physicians, we start, and people from different cultures, people who have different languages. The more we step foot on other countries and start to expand our minds, we begin to have what I would call cognitive flexibility. And this is a term that I have created myself, and I'm proud to share it with the entire community at Howard, at Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and I'm very proud of it. So it's basically the ability to attach to different cultures, languages, sounds, and circumstances. It is our ability to relate to the many changing parts of life and to distinguish them, to categorize them, and to put them into labels and safely secure them into files in our minds. Those things would be the categories in which are languages. If you are able to sort out different languages, if you can recognize, you can pick up Spanish. Oh, he kind of sounds like he's speaking Urdu. She kind of sounds like she's speaking Skrit. She also seems like she has a little Indian flair to her. And we can start categorizing these things. Oh, he's speaking Hebrew. He's speaking German. He's speaking Russian. He's speaking French. You know what I mean? And to be able to categorize those things according to society's standards of communication and linguistics. surroundings, when you're able to look up and recognize where you are. I'm at this place at this time at this hour, in this moment. I feel this way in this moment. I'm thinking this thought in this moment. To have awareness of your surroundings at all times is a part of is a factor of cognitive flexibility. Next up is what I really enjoy. I really enjoy researching cultures and to be able to categorize different cultures and attune them to their exact origin, their exact place in the world, their nationality, and the people within it, the people who practice it. One very important thing that I have done extensive research on is the black culture, which can be traced back all the way to sub-Saharan Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Kush, the Kushites, and even as so far as Israel in the Middle East. And no one would ever think that. The bass, the drums, the sounds, the rhythms are all attuned to a different culture, and they all have their place. They all have their origins, and it's very important not to appropriate different cultures. But I digress. Relationships, being able to categorize different relationships with different people in our lives. If you hit someone up, someone calls you and all they talk about is negativity, you might want to clack that conversation. If you can have a stimulating and fruitful conversation with someone, then that's fruitful. But if you're having a lame, negative conversation with someone that just clouds your mind, that takes away from your cognitive flexibility, then that's not a good relationship. Good and bad relationships, basically. Creativity, being able to sustain a sense of inner childness, not childishness, but inner childness, to preserve your inner child, to have creativity, to be as colorful, as bright, and listen to your music as loud as you want to, and dance in the middle of a park, and get creativity from a song, is important in cognitive flexibility. And lastly is insight, to be able to take everything as a lesson, to not be weighed down by other people's opinion and your search situation. I've been through a lot of situations. Some of them were not so good, some of them were discomforting, some of them were inspiring, some of them were scary. But I've learned to push through those situations and learn every single lesson that I need to learn from them, so that I won't make the same mistakes. And this, in a nutshell, is what I would call cognitive flexibility.